Today was Rich Cimini's turn to look at Zach Wilson's struggles since being drafted by the Jets, with the ESPN writer publishing an article that built upon what Zach Rosenblatt wrote a week or two ago. And a lot of what he discussed was what we already knew, such as his teammates losing faith in him and openly supporting Mike White, as well as the fact that his personality and leadership style has not been a good fit with the Jets so far. However, there were a couple new things I wanted to discuss, first being that the Jets reportedly disagreed on Wilson's talent going into the draft. Apparently, some talent evaluators did not view Wilson as being worthy of the number 2 pick, but rather as a developmental player that would need a few years before he was ready. But on the other hand, assistant GM Rex Hogan and former offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur were sitting there in meetings trying to convince people that there was a legit argument that Zach Wilson was better than Trevor Lawrence. Ultimately, it was Joe Douglas's decision, and he ended up taking him. More on that in a second. The other thing he talked about was that Zach apparently struggled in practice throughout the season just as much as he did in games, with him reportedly only completing 3 passes in a practice before the Broncos game. And hearing all this stuff comes out makes me upset all over again about how the Jets have handled Wilson's development. First of all, the whole Mike LaFleur situation seems even more confusing now. He went from saying that Zach Wilson was better than Trevor Lawrence to complaining about his limitations in like a year and a half. And then he left for another team. So if Wilson was really struggling that much, I'm surprised that they stuck with him as long as they did this season. I mean, then again, they didn't really have many options. But nonetheless, the fact that people in the organization disagreed on their evaluations of Zach in the pre-draft process is kind of a red flag. I can't think of many examples where people were split in their opinions and it worked out. I think it's fair to say that picking Zach second overall put certain expectations on him and that he didn't really handle it very well. However, the 49ers really liked Zach as well. So even if the Jets didn't pick him, I think the 49ers would have just taken him at 3. I mean, they traded up to the 3rd pick right after attending his pro day. And I think that would have been a much better situation for him because not only would he get to play in the Shanahan offense, but he would have sat behind Jimmy Garoppolo for the first year or so and learned the offense and how to play quarterback in the NFL. He also wouldn't have had the pressure of playing in New York, first of all, and second of all, for a Jets team that has been really bad for a long time. And so there's certain pressures that are associated with that he wouldn't necessarily have had to deal with. Moving on, it still really bothers me how his teammates treat him publicly. I'm sure he's got some buddies on the team, but for the most part, it just seems like his teammates don't really like him. I mean, you've got people demanding trades, subtweeting him, and openly supporting his backup instead of standing behind him. And obviously, if the whole team has a problem with him, then that kind of tells you something, but it's still disappointing to see. And I understand that it's all part of professional sports. The players are impacted financially by this stuff, not to mention the fact that they want to win so badly. But for me personally, it just kind of makes me sad. And then finally, the whole work ethic conversation. So Cimini closes his article by talking about how Wilson is a good teammate and that his work ethic has never been questioned after laying out all the issues with his game. Zach's work ethic has often been praised. So my question is, if Zach has problems playing in the pocket and using poor fundamentals and bad mechanics, why haven't the Jets helped him fix that? If he's really as hard of a worker as everyone says he is, how has he not improved at all in 2 years with the organization? Shouldn't they have put him on a program that will help him improve these things he's struggling with? I don't know. That's kind of frustrating, and maybe they have, and it just hasn't worked. But I think it's going to be a big offseason for him, obviously. And Phil Simms, Cimini quoted Phil Simms at the end of the article saying that we're kind of going to have an idea of how this is going to go based on how Zach looks at training camp before the upcoming season. If we look at him and think, wow, this is a completely different guy, he's been working on his mechanics, his fundamentals, whatever, and he looks good, then that's a good sign. But if he looks like the exact same player, then that's not a good thing. Anyway, the Jets look poised to acquire a veteran this offseason, with Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, and Jimmy G being widely connected to the franchise. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Personally, I think Aaron Rodgers would be the ideal pickup from the perspective of Zach Wilson's development, because the two already have a relationship, and Zach could sit back and learn from Rodgers for a year or two. But like I said, we'll just have to see what happens. Let me know what you guys thought about Rich's article, and I will see you in the next video.